In our last episode, the pet detectives visited the children's hospital and were pressed into service as helicopter pilots to help little Thomas and his dad rescue some injured hikers high in the Sierra Mountains. Now, back at the feed store/office, the team were helping Polly Opossum take care of some much-needed house cleaning, while at the same time helping out old Homer on the feed store side of the office. Homer's a little older now and is slowing down a bit, and not as able as he once was to keep up with all the cleaning, stacking heavy sacks of feed and bales of hay like he used to just a few years ago. The pet detective team, just like their parents had taught them, always help a friend in need because it's the right thing to do. Now Homer's a very interesting guy and has all kinds of interesting and entertaining stories on all the places he's lived and all the jobs he's worked throughout the years. So many that it's even hard for Homer to remember them all. Old Homer has never been married or has any family around. The only family he has now are the pet detectives, and that's just fine by old Homer. Now Homer was thrilled when the pet detectives moved in and set up shop at the far end of the feed store, and they fast became good friends. During the cleanup of Homer's feed store, Samuel and Isaac, the twin red foxes, were sweeping away, while Bailey and Pepe and Charlie were dusting the shelves and everything on them, when Bailey found a shiny rock, dusted it off, and asked Homer, "What is this?" Homer replied, "Well, that's a chunk of gold." "Gold?" Well, they all yelled out loud. All their eyes and ears were wide open now to whatever Homer had to say next. "Yes," Homer said, "it's gold all right. I have a gold mine in Minnesota." Pepe said, "Homer, you're my new best rich friend." "Now whoa there, little Pepe," said Homer. "Pump your brakes. You see, I lost my mining crew, and I'm sure you've heard of Minnesota Golden Gophers mascot? Well, it's more than just a mascot. The Golden Gophers are actually gold miners. So what's the problem?" the team asked. Oh, now where's little Thomas? Well, he and Ruger entered a two-man kayak race on the Russian River in Northern California. This is a prestigious race put on by Boris Ikofalot, spelled just like it sounds. The Ivan Kofalot family is famous in Russia as kayakers. Boris invented the famous, but short-lived, ice kayak racing. Boris attached ice skates to the bottom of the kayaks, and they used ice axes as oars to get them up to speed. They raced on frozen lakes in a big circle, but Boris didn't put a whole lot of thought into all of it and what could go wrong. But after about 20 laps of chopping and hacking with their ice axes and going around and around in the exact same spot, they would cut through the ice and would fall right into the icy cold lake. So every race quickly turned into a rescue mission, and Boris became known as Rescue Kofalot. And out of shame, he moved to California, to the banks of the Russian River, just by chance. Now, all Boris knows is kayak racing, so he started putting on kayak races. Each year the races became bigger and bigger. This year's prize was a Russian handmade kayak camper, made just for the kayakers who love camping and fishing just as much as they do kayaking. And it is this grand prize that Thomas and Ruger had their hopes set on winning. In the cool of the early morning, just as the mist had lifted off the river, the hopeful racers lined up at the start of the race. As Boris gave the last-minute instruction, he no longer uses a horn to start the race. You see, Boris is big and loud, and Boris likes things that are big and loud too. So this year, he's using a huge cannon to start the race. So Boris, he pointed the cannon upstream towards the mountains. He gave the countdown, 3, 2, 1, and kaboom! The cannon fired off, and he even surprised Boris how loud it was. And the races started. But this year, the water current was slow, and the water level was low. Regardless, the race was on. But low and slow water are not what Thomas and Ruger are good at. They are best at deep water and fast. So they were left behind by most all the other racers, but they paddled hard and were determined to do their very best regardless. Now the reason for the low water is that way upstream from the race is a huge beaver dam built by an unruly group of beavers that just kept building the dam bigger and bigger, and they didn't care what happened downstream. But when Boris shot the cannon off, he had it pointed upstream. Now whether it was good luck or bad luck, Boris's cannon shot could be heard by the beavers. They looked up and they could see a cannonball headed right towards them and their dam. Then they scattered and just got clear before the cannonball hit the dam and exploded it. Right away, a big wall of water and pieces of the dam headed downstream. Thomas and Ruger were still working hard when Ruger heard a loud noise. Sounded like a freight train behind him. Ruger looked around and he could see a huge wall of water heading right towards them. Yikes! They paddled as fast as they could, so when the wall of water caught up to them and lifted them up, they rode a huge wave of water as they caught up and passed all the other racers one by one, and they soon crossed the finish line in first place. And they did. They won the coveted prize of the custom Russian kayak camper. Congratulations to Team Thomas and Ruger. Now back to the feed store. So the team asked, "What's the problem?" Homer continued, "I hired local Gophers to help dig and work the gold mine. They're known as Corkscrew Gophers and cannot dig in a straight line. They can only dig down in a corkscrew pattern, and they can only go down 6.5 turns and they stop. And for some reason, they cannot go any deeper." Homer continued on. "The Corkscrew Gophers have dug all the corkscrew mines that they could fit on Homer's gold mine. They needed to dig deeper, but they can't, which has put the Gophers out of work. Homer said he might have to sell the gold mine if he can't get the Gophers to dig deeper, which would put the Gophers out of work permanently. Bailey said maybe we should go to Minnesota and see if we can figure out a way to help the Corkscrew Gophers dig deeper and get Homer's mine back in business and save the Gophers' jobs." Homer was very excited about the possibility of getting the mine back in service and the Gophers their jobs back. So Homer said, "Deal." So off to Corkscrew, Minnesota, to Homer's Corkscrew gold mine, named after the local Gophers, of course. The pet detective team drove straight out to the Corkscrew gold mine to meet up with the foreman of the mining company, Otis. Now Otis is a canary who grew up in the West Virginia coal mine as a coal mine canary. But when Otis was a little chick, his mom, Miss Evelyn, won the local queen contest for the West Virginia Birdseed Company. And part of her prize for winning is the Birdseed Company paid her for using her image on all the company's products. Well, West Virginia Birdseed Company is a birdseed that Homer sells in his feed store. And one day, while calling in his order, he met Miss Evelyn and little Otis over the phone. And to get Otis out of the coal mine, Homer hired Otis to be a foreman at the Corkscrew gold mine. Fast forward to today, Otis took the pet detectives on a tour of the mine. And just like Homer said, the Corkscrew Gophers can dig down like a corkscrew for 6.5 turns, and then they would stop and cannot dig in a straight line. And Otis has tried everything and he cannot figure it out. There is gold in this mine, but we need to go deeper to find more and to get the Gophers back to work so we all can make a living. We tried all kinds of things. We'd offered more money. We tried a personal training coach to get the Gophers in better shape. We even tried hypnotizing him one time, and the only thing that happened when we did that is little Stanley stopped sucking his thumb. Yeah, it's a good result, but still we couldn't dig any deeper. So the pet detective tried some new ideas. Bailey said, "What if they dig standing on their heads? They'll think they're digging up instead of down." But they were soon to find out that the Gophers just ended up with dirt in their noses and still could not dig. So they called it a day. But in the morning, the team decided to walk back to the gold mine with the Gophers, and they learned that Corkscrew Gophers when they are tired, they walk backwards, and they walk backwards just as well as they walk forwards. The team tried several more things to try and solve the gopher problem, but to no avail. Now, meanwhile, Pepe had not been helping the team at all. He was looking for gold for himself and not having any luck. But Charlie understood the Gophers couldn't dig any deeper, and he said, what if they walk 6.5 turns backwards down the mine shaft, so when they get to the bottom and turn around, they should start digging? Everyone looked shocked. It made sense, and it just might work. Pepe said, well, chop chop, let's get to digging. That gold ain't gonna find itself. So the Gophers walked down the mine shaft backwards that they had dug. They got to the bottom, turned around, and yes, they found they could dig for another 6.5 turns, and just kept repeating it and kept digging and digging. Pepe said, sometimes big problems have small answers, just like he had come up with the answer himself. Well, the gold mine was saved, and the Corkscrew Gophers were back at it, digging deeper than they had ever dug before, and finding lots and lots of gold. Now, the Corkscrew City Mayor had a big celebration and wanted to honor the pet detectives. Pepe thinking that they would get a prize of gold and money, so Pepe made sure he was the one to receive the award. But much to Pepe's disappointment, the mayor gave him a key to the city. And yes, the key to the city was a corkscrew, not the gift of gold and the money that Pepe had imagined. So back to the feed store to finish the cleanup chores they had all started and listen to old Homer tell more stories. But this time they were paying attention and asking a lot of questions. Now, if you want more golden stories like this, well, do like Charlie says and hit that like and subscribe buttons. And share this with a friend, and be sure to ring that notification bell so you don't miss any of our adventures. And Little Colonel says he reads all your comments, so proper grammar is in order. And we'll see you next time on the adventures of the Pet Detectives.